So we're now recording. Hello, Eliza.
Hello, Jeff.
Welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. When I started planning this whole project of mine, you were one of the first people I thought of, actually.
Oh, awesome.
So
Thank you.
you're welcome. So let's see, Eliza DeMille Robinson, author, entrepreneur. What else am I missing? Mom, deep thinker. Come to that later. Champion for freedom. Is there anything else we should add to your resume?
Uh, there's a whole list of things that I would add personally, just things I care about, but I think that's good
Well, it's a good. Well,
for
let's see. So, oh, and I'm gonna come to my first important question. But this is the book that you released last year, right? 2019,
Yep, that's
called
right.
it Intelligence,
Hmm.
psychological thriller on the future of freedom, and um, it is psychological and it is a thriller. I think I told you at one point.
Is it a
We got a little bit. I was reading it with my wife, and we were reading it out loud, and we got to a point where there is a I can't. This is not a spoiler. There's a spy, and the spy goes off to go do their spying thing, and it got really anxious. I'm like, oh, what if they get
thriller?
caught? What's gonna happen? Those people are really evil. Um, but yeah, it's a fantastic book. We really enjoyed it. So there's a blurb on the back I should probably include. Eliza Robinson hates sharks. I kind of forgot about, I forgot you were a hater
True.
of sharks. She is a cast member of Mentoring in the Classics at TJ Ed, Thomas Jefferson Education, and enjoys martial arts. I don't know how I didn't know that. I've known you for, what, almost 5 years now?
Yeah, just about.
2015, late 2015? Martial arts. Okay, that's not a thing I knew. Stargate, I knew that. And arguing over books late into the night, I think I knew that as well.
I think you knew that one, yeah.
Eliza and her husband Scott have one. Yeah, it needs to be updated. Have two daughters. Congratulations, because that was fairly recent.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, let's go.
how's she doing?
She's great. We love her. She's wonderful.
Those are good things. So my first important question for you is, when's the next one coming out?
Well, we told everybody in the last book it'll be this year, and
uh,
we're really close actually. So hopefully within the next couple of months, I'm pretty much done with what I need to do. There's just some final editing stuff. We want to get it out to the editor, I mean to the printer by August. So we should have it in the next few
oh, I
months.
am really excited because when you binge read and binge watch, which is the thing these days, you get to the end of one and you're like,
Where's the
because
next one?
you left it with so many really cool things that are going to be coming in the next book, and I was so excited about that. And I'm like, we're not there yet. I guess we have to wait. We'll have to find
Yeah,
something
you
else to
got
read in the meantime.
it. That's right.
So, so in intelligence, can you let's just tell me about the book? I mean, I know about it, but let's tell the viewer what this is about.
Okay. Well, I get asked that question all the time. What is your book about? And that's, I don't know why, but it's hard for me. I'm like,
I
I don't know,
imagine
just
it
read
is.
it.
I've having read it. Yeah.
I don't know, like it's hard for me to explain it, but it's a dystopian novel on, like it says, on the future of freedom. For me, growing up, freedom was always something I was really passionate about. My dad was an author of education and freedom, and just really taught us and instilled those principles and that, I don't know, that passion inside of
Hmm.
us, inside of me especially. I always felt really drawn to the idea of freedom and fighting for freedom and understanding it. So I always have learned really well from stories and from fiction. So when I got a little bit older, I
Hmm.
started to come up with these cool ideas and put it together into a book. And I just really wanted to teach some of the principles and the things that I care about through characters that I have grown to love and a story that I've definitely fallen in love with too. That doesn't really give you much of a idea of what the book is about still, because like I said, I don't even know how really to describe it.
So yeah. So
But
dystopian future. There's a war.
mm-hmm.
And it looks like the World War, maybe three, maybe four. I don't
Yeah, it
know.
takes place in World War III, is what I
Okay.
call it. Who knows?
And it looks like it's come down to just two forces. You've got the. It's interesting because there's a whole conversation in this book, and it's one I wanted to kind of have here a little bit about who are the good guys
Yeah,
And
that is
and
the
this is one of the
question.
things I was thinking about this morning. I was like, I need to talk to Eliza. What should I talk to Eliza about? Um, so, as I said, you were a deep thinker, and the more I read, and I knew that ahead of time, but the more I read this book, the more we read this book, the more I realized that you are a very deep thinker because there's a lot of philosophical richness in intelligence. There really is, and uh, I think just knowing you, you have probably read, studied, and thought more about freedom and the topics surrounding freedom in your life, and you're a fairly young person than most people, 99% of people ever will ever or ever have. And you said your family really influenced you in that. Um, Tell me about your thought process when you were coming up with the story and and how to weave that into to freedom.
Well, I've always
Did,
been kind of, sorry, go
I mean,
ahead.
did you have an idea of what you wanted to say about freedom and then wove a story around it, or did it kind of happen organically and you found things that I don't know? How do you go about doing this?
I would say it was a lot more organically um, that it came together. I've always been kind of the Anna Green Gables character type who's always like imagining cool things all the time. Oh, this would be awesome, and just taking real life and exaggerating it a little bit. And I was always coming up with just these ideas. I used to tell my sisters all these stories for bedtime stories, just the things that I was coming up with. So these characters and some of the storyline I've had in my head for ever since I was a kid.
Wow.
But more and more, as I started putting it to paper, the ideas just started kind of flooding in with the storyline, and I think they kind of both changed each other throughout. I mean, it took me 6 years to finish this first book, and I would say it wasn't really one book throughout that whole time. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of turned into 50 different books, but ultimately it came together into one that I am really proud of, and I wouldn't really recommend anyone read any of the previous drafts because I'm not as proud of those ones.
Yeah,
But I had
I
to.
think we had at least one of those, and you're like,
Yes, you
please,
did.
please, please delete it. And I never
Yeah,
looked at it, even though I wanted to.
good. I'm
I
so
think
glad.
Marin took that seriously. She's like, yeah, she's like, we're going to
I mean,
respect Eliza.
thank you. I mean, there was some of the same stuff in there, but I was kind of growing up through the process of writing this whole book. So it's I don't know. A lot of that older stuff is more of the teenage and younger side of me. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely prefer this version. But I think the ideas just kind of wove themselves. I would be writing a character, and they would just come alive, and the things that they were passionate about and the things that they cared about, all of a sudden, they didn't just seem like this person that I had invented. They were my friend that I was telling their story, and it really kind of became that way. I feel like it wasn't always intentional. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my intentions in the beginning were to write a great book about freedom, and as I went in, the ideas that came, they weren't very intentional. Every now and then I'd say, oh, I want to throw in this idea. How can I put this across? But for the most part, I was just telling the story that came to me. And I guess it kind of just happened on its own, if that makes sense.
It happened really well. I mean, you created some characters that we really grew to love, honestly.
I'm so glad.
Um, and and it starts off with a bang for sure. I was not expecting the beginning of
That's
this
the
book,
goal.
and I was just kind of floored because like I said, I've known you for almost 5 years, and um, one of the interesting things that came up for us was I was talking to Marin after we had read a part where you had written this character who has you never know what they're doing, you and you never know what's going on underneath, and trying not to spoil things, but and they're very complicated, and you don't see the end of their their intention until later, and then you're
I'm
like,
trying to
oh,
figure out who you're talking
well, yeah.
about because there's so many.
I'll tell you later.
There's
But
a
I
lot.
got to the end of that, and we're like, wow, that person is something else. And then I realized Eliza thought all that up. I'm kind of scared of Eliza now,
That's awesome.
but it, yeah, yeah, it's an incredible book, and it sounds like from what you're saying that it it kind of grew up with you. Did it
Yeah.
change you, or did besides you changing it as you went along?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's changed me in every aspect of my life. People ask me a lot, like outside of scripture, what's your favorite book? And despite the fact, I mean, obviously, I have so many books that I just love
I
and
can't
they're probably off
imagine.
the list. I
You
can't
grew up
even.
without books in your house, I'm sure.
Oh, there,
Yeah.
just around this room, there's like dozens and dozens of books.
Mm.
Um, but I don't know. The answer always has to come back to I have to say my book because of what it's done to me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not because I think it's better than other books, because I really don't. I feel like, I mean, I love it. I think everyone should read it. But
Mm.
more than that, I just feel like the things that I was able to learn from as I was writing and as I was growing up with it, like you said, I don't know. It's shaped me into who I am today in so many ways. And I know a lot of other people have told me that it's benefited them and they've learned from it. And I'm so glad. And I mean, that was a big goal of mine, but I just can't even begin to explain how much it has changed me too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
It's
I don't
given
know.
us a lot to think about. And there's a bit of M. Night in it too, where I'm going to go back for a second reading, by the way, because a lot of the topics really kind of deserve that, and the characters do, I think, too. But going back, knowing at the end what you didn't know at the beginning is going to be an interesting prospect. But where do these characters come from? Are there any characters you don't mind naming that would be spoiler free
Um,
that you love or like to talk about?
I could talk about any one of them. Um, where do they come from is one question
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of fun for me, because in the beginning, when I started writing it, each of these characters, or at least a lot of them, were kind of based off of people in my life. So one of the main characters, the main male character of the book, Jackson, is actually based off of my younger brother. And then Ava, obviously, in the beginning was kind of based off of me, because that was just, I was telling her story and I was the person who knew my story.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of started out based off of us, but um, I mean, it didn't take very long before they were not us at all. They were their own character,
Uh,
and you
that's
can still see elements, but
that's the fascinating thing to me is that you can come up with a character who's not you or not based off something that already exists just to make a person out of whole cloth.
right.
It's I have a lot of respect for authors. I really do because they have to do that. Um, and I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I mean, you created some people who are completely different than anyone I've ever met, including you, and um, you've given them a life and you've given them an energy. I think a lot of the characters in Intelligence have a lot of soul,
I agree.
and and Ava and Jackson are certainly those. Um, so, what was your inspiration for doing it as a dystopian novel?
That's it's an interesting question, because when I started writing this book, I had never read a dystopian book before. I had never read any of them myself. I'd read a lot of cool history books and I'd read some fiction here and there, but I really didn't know what dystopian was. I kind of just started writing the book, and the first draft of it was completely finished before I ever read Hunger Games or Lord of the Flies or any of these books. I had never read any of them before finishing the first draft of this book. So I couldn't even say, like, I didn't really know what dystopian was. I just wrote the book. So, I mean, it's definitely grown since then as I've read more dystopian and learned more about it and just kind of gotten the feel for it. And at the same time, I was still rewriting my book over and over again. But it had that inside of it. It had that character long before I even knew what it was. So I couldn't say what inspired me to write dystopian. I just wrote the story, and it just happened to be a dystopian.
Wow. What about what about your inspiration? You said that you've mostly read a lot of, at least up till that point, you read a lot of nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a big inspiration, or?
Yeah, a lot of what I had really loved at the time I started writing this book was actually like American history founding books. So I read a lot about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, just some of these founding fathers who had shaped our country and their stories. So that had been a lot of what I had studied before starting this. And just seeing, I guess I was always fascinated with war. And it wasn't because I loved it and I wanted it or I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
something I ever wanted to do. I was fascinated with the concept of people standing up for something that is so important to them that they would be willing to give their lives for, that they would be willing to go into battle with the people they love most and be willing to lose everything they cared about because that thing was so important. And that's a concept I actually, some of my characters go through that same question. What is freedom and why are so many people willing to give their all for it? I was just so fascinated with that concept as I studied these founding fathers that it just got me really so passionate about that one thing. What is freedom? Why does it matter so much? Why is it the question every single time? Why is every single battle and fight and argument, why does it always come back to freedom, you know?
And that's
And I feel like it does in one way or another.
it really does. And so this is, what is this? This is May 2020, right? And we're in the middle of coronavirus lockdowns, and there's a lot of conversation about freedom.
Yeah.
And I saw something that really kind of disturbed me. What was it today? Someone said something about, um, oh gosh, it was like, I'd have to find it for the exact quote, but they're like, oh, some people are just too worried about freedom. And it was a
Wow.
lot more, it was a lot worse than that. It was, and
I mean,
I'm
that's
like,
pretty bad. So.
that's, like, what do you even say to
Ouch.
something like that? I'm really starting to think that there are just two completely different mindsets
Yeah.
in the world. People who are interested in freedom and give it a value, and those who don't. And in the context of your book, it's really easy to vilify the other side.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is a lot of the whole conversation right now is about masks. Oh, you wear a mask or you don't wear it. And it's turning into left and right, or wearing masks or not wearing masks. And it's like, oh my gosh,
It's so
this
funny.
is insanity. Um, but yeah, I recognize both sides in that they are concerned with the health and happiness of people, right? Um, and they're just, I see like the conversation kind of happens like this. They're not meeting through any, you know, in their thought process at all.
Yeah.
What's been your take on the current situation and people discussing freedom versus, I don't even know, not freedom?
Um,
Have you been paying attention much? Because honestly,
always.
I because for I would say just please don't even watch because it's ugly, but I know you pay attention.
It
So
is. Sometimes it's easier, and I don't know. It's hard to pay attention because I feel like all the time, and something paid attention to in my book too, is just how often people are fighting each other without ever really listening to the other person's side or
mhm.
their point of view. And it's so sad how that happens constantly, where you're just trying to get your point across and you're not even listening to what the other person has to say.
Mhm.
And I think too often there's things we agree on, there's things we totally disagree on, but it's hard to watch the news and all these things because it's not really about understanding each other. It's about getting our point across. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean that's hard to witness and see and be a part of.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I'm really not liking social media these days, and I tend to stay away from it except for I want to know what's going on. And on the rare occasion that I'll post something, it's usually along these lines of, "Hey, we're forgetting about this," or "We're forgetting about that." And I posted something
Yeah.
yesterday uh, um, about concerns for people who, there's the increased rate of suicides, increased rate of overdoses, domestic violence, and things. And someone
Yeah.
replied and just kind of wrote it off as like, "Oh yeah, well the people who were saying that are Trump fans." And I'm like, okay, well I'm not a Trump fan, but frankly, does it matter who's saying it? Are these
Right.
people suffering and dying, or are they not? And can we do something about it? Why does it have to be Um, and I wrote this epic curse-laden rant in my head that, that I have not posted because I'm trying to be good because I
Probably
was
good.
so angry. I'm like, why can we not just pay attention to the people?
And I
Um,
feel like way too often it happens from the other side too. I've seen a lot of people who are saying, I mean, from their point of view, people are saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's coronavirus only affects certain people." And then I heard one person say, "Well, for you, it's only for me. It's my everything. This is my spouse. This is
yeah,
everything I care about." And it's so hard because people are just pounding and saying their point of view and just not understanding each other, not listening. And like you said, people are turning it into a left and right battle when it's not that at all. It's about our humanity. It's about our
yeah,
lives. Yeah,
exactly. That's the word I was thinking. It's about people. It's about humanity
yeah,
and how we choose to treat each other. And I like to
absolutely.
say I'm not a judgmental person, except I really judge how people treat each other.
Right.
I'm just, I seem to not be able to let go of that.
Yeah,
And so when I see people treating each other this way, it frustrates the heck out of me. And I'm like, can we get back to the
yeah,
purpose of this? But I'm not, I'm not left, I'm not right. You know, I see a lot of fault on both sides. And yeah.
absolutely. And a lot of truth on both sides too.
hmm Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have a really good friend from back east. She lives out in this area now, and she just lost her dad a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago to COVID-19. It's a real thing,
Okay.
and people are suffering, and yeah, I'm telling my parents they live in New Jersey. Heaven help them,
Yeah.
because it's not New York, but it's a mess. I should
Yeah.
clarify, it's not New York City, but New Jersey is a bit of a mess. Um, I have family in upstate New York too, and things are much better there. But I tell my parents, don't if you don't need to get out there, don't get out there.
Yeah.
And if you do, be really careful. Wear a mask. You, you know, I don't know if it's going to help or not, but it's not going to hurt. At least in your case, I have friends who are asthmatics who can't do that because
Right.
it would create complications, and it just becomes such a big mess. But we're getting off the topic, which is freedom. Um,
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, is this your first story? But it is, right? Did you write other
It
things
is.
before this? It's your first book. Is it your first story?
I had written a lot of articles and opinion pieces and stuff like that, but this is my first story that I've ever written.
I love that. I love that because um, you're young as it is. When were you writing these articles and opinion pieces? When you were like 10 or?
It was like 14, 15, 16, just
Oh
like
my goodness.
years before I started this. They're not very good, I
Oh,
should
well,
clarify.
you did it though.
I did do it, yes.
You did it. So, you said that the next one is mostly finished. Is there going to be a third?
There's going to be four actually. I am planning on making it four different books. So I have this rule that I'm not allowed to start writing the next book until the one before it is like completely done to the printer, sort of thing. So that's been really hard because I'm pretty much done with that, what I can do with the book right now, but I have to like hold myself back and not finish writing.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in the beginning, it was meant to be a trilogy, but when I was about halfway through writing this second book, United Intelligence, I just had this realization: I only have this many pages roughly that I can write in this book without making it way too long. And the first one was already probably too long. So I was already like, oh my goodness, what? There's so much more that needs to be written. And I just realized, okay, that means it's two more books and not
Yeah.
just one because there's so much left.
So, are you still exploring the story? Obviously, the story, but are you focusing on that? Are you still exploring topics of freedom and what it means for the various sides?
Absolutely, both. Yeah, definitely. There's still so much. I mean, each of these characters still has so much of their story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
The war is so far from being resolved in one way or another, and just the storyline itself, I feel like there's just so much to it, and there's so many more things that I want to get across. And I'm hoping somewhere, like I said, a lot of it just kind of weaves itself in, but I'm hoping somewhere along the line we'll get to tell this piece of freedom or this idea. So, I mean, there's just for me, there's a lot to be finished in there.
So, what do you want people to take out of the series? What are the kinds of things that you want people to be thinking about? and to consider?
Well, for me, when it comes down to freedom, I have always believed that each of us, each human being, has a personal mission or a calling that we could give our lives to. I mean, things that we're naturally passionate about, things that we tend to care about, anyways. I feel like a lot of us are called to serve and to live our lives in certain areas um, within the world. And I feel like freedom is only achieved when enough people are doing that, and enough people are living their personal mission and going out and serving in that area. So I guess for me, what I want people to take from this book is the importance of freedom, why it matters so much. I want them to have that realization as they're going throughout and seeing what it looks like without it, what it looks like with it, and why people are willing to give their all for it. And then I want people to hopefully step away with a resolve to either discover their personal mission if they haven't found it, or to go out and live the things they already know that they're supposed to do. And I just feel like if enough of us can do that, then freedom will last a little bit longer, as long as we're doing that.
It's interesting. You talk about people finding their passion and pursuing it, and something
Mm-hmm.
that Marin and I and you and Scott and a lot of people worked on for and are continuing to work on is helping people to extract themselves from whatever they have to do to
Yeah,
pursue what's important to them.
absolutely.
And that is such a. I don't think people. I mean, and I know people don't realize that they're stuck half the time. They don't realize that they have a passion, a purpose in their life, a life mission. I like how you put that, a life mission. Um, how,
Actually, I have a. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I have two characters in my book that kind of have a similar conversation. It's the two that I mentioned before, Jackson and Ava. And it's pretty early on in the story when she's really kind of pessimistic about the world around her, because all she's ever seen is just the doom and gloom. And even though she's been raised up to be this hope, she's never had really instilled in her the ideas of why. It's always just been like, okay, this is your
Mm-hmm.
job, go do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But she meets this character, Jackson, who is so optimistic about everything and has no real reason to be from her understanding. She doesn't get why he believes so much. And a lot of the time, she just thinks he's naive. But eventually, she ends up asking him why he's so optimistic
Mm-hmm.
about it all. And that's what you just said is something he covers. He says, right now, because of the war, there are so many people who are doing their have to. They have to go and serve their time in the military. They have to go and fight in this war because they were assigned to. They have to work on this area for the government, or this for the war, for the efforts there. And he says, I am optimistic because look around us. And he points out just different pieces of art all around,
Oh yeah, I
whether
remember
it's
this
car,
conversation.
whether music, yeah, whether it's the architecture in the building, whether it's just the beauty of the outdoors. He just points out all these things and he says to her, um, I am optimistic because this was created by someone, because there are artists of every kind all around. And unfortunately, right now, they're not really allowed to pursue those things because they have to focus on their survival. They're very getting food on the table, let alone, not being bombed. They have to focus on surviving. Um, so I'm optimistic here because I know that when we finish this war, when we complete and fight for freedom and we gain it, then all of these people can go out and live the thing that is theirs to do, rather than just focusing on what they have to do.
I wonder
And
if.
I guess that's a lot of
Sorry.
what it means to me, what this book means to me.
I wonder if, as a society here in the U.S., at least, and probably Western European world, that we went through that in maybe World War II, World War One, and got to
Yeah.
the end. And I wonder if people knew where to even pick up and move. I think just looking around, and I didn't live through those times. Just looking around, I wonder if people didn't realize that they were stuck that way, and they just continued living, and now we have the society we have.
Absolutely.
You get up and you go to work and you come home and you're feeding your family. It's the same thing. Um,
I mean, but even so, like, we have, because you're absolutely right, way too many of us take our freedoms that we do have for granted, or don't even recognize that we have them, so we're losing them. But even so, I mean, our country, even today, with all the freedoms that we're losing and have lost, we still, I mean, you can still go out and build a thriving business. I mean,
Yep.
me and my husband have experienced that. You can still go out and pursue your dreams. And I just, I think way too many of us take that for granted too. The fact that there is opportunity in our
Mhm.
lives today. I think a lot of times we get so, like you said, we get so caught up in the day-to-day survival of
Mhm.
things that we forget that we do live in a free society right now, and we do take for granted the fact that we can pursue mission right now. And if we did, we might not lose so many freedoms, and we might actually keep it.
I, I I love how entrepreneurship seems to be the path to remembering that. One of the people that I like to watch on occasion is Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's
Not,
a business development guy. He is son of immigrants into New Jersey, and they built he built an online wine business, a wine club, and
oh, cool.
his biggest thing right now is he talks to people about taking opportunities and how it is so incredibly easy right now to start something. Um,
Yeah.
and just watching him talk to people and take questions and putting content out there directed towards people who can go out and do this, they just don't know it, is you don't realize that you can do this. You don't realize that in our society here that this is an option for you. Maybe you thought about it and figured, oh, I can't do that because I'm just you know, I'm a 9 to 5 guy and I can't do that. I gotta feed the family. I got all this stuff to do. Um,
Yeah.
and I imagine everyone considers the idea of getting some more personal freedom and pursuing things that interest them, but they just put it aside.
Yeah.
Um, Something that uh, my wife just put out, not put out, but just sent me was this guy, Gary Vee, talking to people who are over the age of 40. Specifically addressing them and said, look, you've got 40, 50 years left. And in this society where we've got the internet and we've got Instagram and he likes TikTok. I don't like TikTok. I'm not a fan. But when there's so many opportunities, he directed it specifically to people who are older and probably feel like, oh, well, my time has passed. It's for young people now. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have enough time left. And that impacts me because I'm in that age group. And it's interesting to
Right.
see how people in any age group, I don't know if teens are that way anymore because apparently they think they can go out and, grab the world by the tail and pull it down and stick it in their pocket, right? Who was that guy? Oh, yeah, Chris Farley and his
Yeah.
motivational speaker. Um, but I don't know. In the people that way back in your young age now, Eliza. Um, People that of your and Scott's age, what are they thinking about that right now?
Well,
How are
first
they
of all, I
seeing the world?
yeah, I just got to say, I mean, Jeff, you are an awesome example to all of those people out there who are older saying, "Oh, I can't do it. It's too late. My time has passed." I mean, you have always been the guy who said, "I have this much time left. I got to jump in. I got to get going," you know?
Well, I'm
And I've
hoping I got
always been
another good 50 years, and thank you.
absolutely. Well, yeah, that's a good amount of time to get some stuff done. So
Well,
I think you're a great example of that. Just
well, thank you.
never yeah.
I will tell you though, it wasn't until about, like I said, around when I met you and got involved in some entrepreneurial things and got around people who have that perspective
Yeah.
of you don't be locked in, do something else, go for what you want, have a life that you actually want to have. And it wasn't until then, and I don't want to give away my age or anything, but that that was well into my 40s when I figured that out, when I had other people teach me that. And so, um, what do we do for people to keep them from getting into their 30s and 40s before they realize that they can do something else?
You know, that's a hard question because you asked, what do people my age think? And I think we're pretty split. There's a lot of us who know we can be entrepreneurs or know we can go out and pursue our mission in whatever way. And then there's the other people who think that they just have to do exactly what everybody else is doing because there is no other way to make money or survive. And I don't know. It's kind of, I think everyone's kind of still optimistic at this age where they still don't really see it as a downward incline or anything like that. They don't see that if what you were saying, where you get into your 40s and realize, oh, what am I doing? A lot of them don't really think that'll happen to them. But I mean, I don't know. It's hard. I guess the real answer is just education. If enough of us were reading and understanding the world and history and everything, then enough of us would realize it works for us too, because they're the same principles wherever you go, you know?
Do you think people are kind of overloaded?
Overloaded.
Overloaded in their lives. There's just too much going on. You want to present
Absolutely.
an idea to them, and they're just like, I can't even.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of times that's the biggest excuse that we have because it's every excuse. I mean, it's not just one thing. Like it's everything going on. It's hard, and I can relate to that. I mean, there's a lot of things that hold us back from accomplishing what we want to do, and I feel that just on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I have two kids right now. We're building a business together, my husband and I. We have a lot going on the outside, and yet still the idea of trying to find time to write or pursue the things
Uh-huh.
that I really love and do, that's hard and it's daunting and sometimes it's really impossible. And I think that some days it is. Some days you don't get much done for your mission or for your passion, but the 10% of the time where you do, that's what makes
Oh,
all the difference. And I think that's what people miss. You don't have to quit your job and go off and do something different. If you are spending 90% of your time on the things that you have to do and just 10% on the stuff that you really want to do, 10% is enough. 10% still
wow.
gets it done. And I've experienced that in my life. I've seen my husband, seen my parents, and a whole bunch of people around me. Just the understanding that principle, it doesn't have to be 100% of the time, all of your efforts to your passion. Just a little bit here and there, it does make enough of a difference that you'll look back one day and say, "Wow, I did it.
Yeah.
I
So
got everything I wanted."
people really overestimate the amount of time it's going to take to do something, huh?
Absolutely.
And most likely they underestimate their ability to do it. I think that's
Right.
really
Yeah.
really true. Interesting.
Maybe.
So you've done something that you really wanted to do your entire life. You've published a book. You've got three more coming.
That's right.
What else is going to be happening in the world of Eliza after you get your books done? What else is like digging? Yeah, you're like, okay, I'll get to that later. It's kind of digging in your brain. It's something I really want to do. What else is in store for your life?
That's a good question. People always ask me specifically about writing. They say, "So when you're done with these books, what are you going to write?" And I don't know. I really don't. I don't have the whole vision planned out all the way through, but I have a couple of steps in advance, and I have two things mixed together. I was just reading a book called The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life,
Hmm.
and it's a great book. I mean, it sounds really strange and awesome, and it is, and it's amazing. But something that he talks about a lot throughout that book is I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how to get there. And to me, that really means a lot of the times we don't really know the entire path laid out, but we can find the next step. He's talking, relating it specifically to tracking lions. So he's saying, I'm not sure where that lion is, but I know exactly how to get there because it's one track at a time. And on the flip side, there's obviously the 7 habits idea, the seven habits of highly effective people idea, where begin with the end in mind. And I think if you mix the two hand in hand and say, okay, this is kind of where I
Wow.
want to end up, this is my next step. Okay, let's get going. The truth is, I don't really know all the things that I'm going to accomplish from here to there. I don't really know what else I'm going to write because I'm just kind of focused on my next step. Because
Yeah.
for me right now, that is all I can do. I mean, like you said, the overload that we often have in our lives, we feel like we're just staying above water. We're just barely surviving. And I relate to that too. There's times when I feel like I couldn't possibly come up with more ideas of what I want to do because I'm just barely doing this. But
Well, you have a lot of ideas already. I know
I do.
there are island houses and other
Oh
things
yeah.
that are still probably floating around in there.
And I think something I've always been really passionate about is mentoring and speaking and just different things, teaching people. So I see that in my future for sure. I don't know how it'll fit in or where or when, but that's something I definitely want to do. Obviously, writing more is something I love to do.
Mhm.
Definitely want to keep having more kids and building our business. Just, I don't really know, but I'm excited to see where we go from here.
So if someone came up to you and said, I love this book, I'm drafting a script, I want to make a movie out of it, what's your answer? Yes? No? Do you want to be involved? Do you want to be the J.K. Rowling sitting there watching your characters come to life on the screen? Or
Yes, yes, I do. Okay,
I
I
want
guess
to
I
see that
forgot to
movie.
mention
That's why
that.
I'm asking, because I really want to see that movie
Oh, I do too,
or
man. That
that
you're
series.
right. That has always been like a lifelong dream since I first started writing these books. I want to see them turned into movies and really good ones too, not like the ones you're disappointed they even made a movie out of it. I want it to be like Lord of the Rings level, really good. Which I mean,
So if I meet
hopefully
Peter
it's good enough to
Jackson,
start with.
I
But
should send him your way then? Is that it?
please do. I'd love to see.
So, do you have actors picked out? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, we've made a couple of different dream cast lists here and there, but we'll see what happens.
I would love to see that list. Maybe you can share. But yeah, I am really excited for the next one. Yeah, I guess I have to wait a little while. What should I be reading in the meantime?
Oh man, I could give you a book list if you want.
Okay.
I don't know. Throughout the book, we have a couple of characters who are kind of getting their education and reading a bunch of different books. If there's any of the books that they mention in Intelligence that you haven't read, I'd say start there because
Hmm.
those are some really good books. That was one place I was kind of intentional with the books that I put in that they mentioned because I do a bunch of classics that I think everybody should read at some point or
Hmm.
another in their life. So if you haven't read those ones, start there. And if you have read those ones, look at the book lists they offer because a lot of times they do, and they'll give you other ideas. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that's a good
Okay.
place to start.
Okay. I'll. Do you have that list floating around, or do I need to read the book again?
I'll see if I can send you some. I'd have
No,
to read the book again to
I know
remember
you
what's
and
all
your
in there.
family have book lists, and I'm sure I know
Of
exactly the
course.
website where I could find one. Um, okay, so on the other side of that, um, when you say, you know what, you know how you just feel like junk food sometimes? You're like, I just want to have some
Yeah.
chocolate and some potato chips. On the book side, what's your junk food? What's your do you do you read junk food books?
Uh,
And
for
if
me, I don't read junk food books like junk food sometimes, I guess, if
mhm.
that makes sense. I never read books that you can't get stuff out of, but there's times that I will read the same books that I usually get stuff out of without trying to get stuff out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I read ones
yeah.
more for entertainment. A
Hmm.
lot of times I go to, I really love the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins.
Hmm.
That's one of my favorite junk food books, but also it's one of my favorite inspiration books. So it depends on how you're reading it. I love a lot of different Brandon Sanderson books. Those are fun for me a lot of the
Hmm.
time. But again, there's so much to be gotten there. I don't know. A lot of the time it's just Jane Austen, things like that. Shakespeare.
As I
But the
say,
thing is,
Jane Austen is about as far from junk food as you can get, except for
exactly.
Shakespeare.
But I feel like all of these are. I feel like all of these are great classics that you can get so much from. But also you can just read them for fun because they're really fun books too. So
Yeah, yeah.
depends
A-
on how you want to read it.
And I think that's what we did with Intelligence. The first read was fun and the story, and my next read is going to be okay. I'm probably taking notes. You got to
Nice.
love a book where there's space in the back for notes.
Yep.
he he
That's
really
right.
thought that through. Page
Absolutely.
number and description. Um, so tell me about sharks. I'm I'm kidding.
Oh man,
I've known that you
where to
hated
start?
sharks. So how does the song go? Baby shark. Do 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 do.
Yes, my daughter loves
I
that
was going to say
song.
you have two little kids,
Yes.
so you can't
I
escape at least that aspect
I
of it.
did not show her the song to be clear, but everybody else thought it was funny because I dislike sharks so much they decided to share it with her. Actually, she's My daughter has received stuffed animal sharks, little toy bath sharks, like squishy sharks. She's received every kind of shark that you can get because, you know, they
Because of
think
you.
it's funny to mess with me. And she now loves sharks. So yeah, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I can't think of much more to ask you. Is what except for what is on your mind these days?
What is on my mind?
What is on your mind?
Oh man.
Well, okay. I know diapers are on your mind, and and
Don't worry, my mind didn't go there.
and taking care of business and things. But when you're not thinking about the day to day, what are you thinking about these
Yeah,
days?
that's just the 90% of stuff, which
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, raising children is definitely in my 10% because I absolutely love it. The diapers part is probably in the 90% of things, just the stuff I have to get done. But no, I think a lot of what has been on my mind is this second book coming out because I I told you it took me 6 years to write book one. It took me less than a year to write book two. And a lot of that was just because I had had the experience, I had learned how to actually write and knew what I was doing this time. A lot of it was because I had finished the first one, so that was marked in stone. I couldn't go change it over and over again. But also it was because this story, it just kind of, again, it just kind of took over and it became something that I didn't exactly know was there. I never really, it's that whole thing, know where you're going and know the next step. I know how the book ends.
Mm-hmm.
The final book ends. I know the exact last scene. I know what I'm going to see there, but I have no idea how we're getting there. And that is absolutely 100% true. That's how it's been. I don't really know what's going to happen next.
Begin with the end in mind.
Yep, begin with the end in mind and know your next, do the next right thing, like Frozen 2. That's kind of been my motto, these two things. But this second book, I have to say, I have learned so much from it that I didn't even know, like, I could. I've been really grateful for the things I've gotten from it. It also has an even more extensive book list than the last one because these are a bunch of books that I've been reading since I finished the last book, and I felt like were kind of helpful towards the storyline. So as these characters are reading these books and the story is happening along with it, a lot of these books kind of help a lot with it because they were the things that I learned and found a way to put in here. But I don't know. This second book is, I would say it's not as war in the sense that we see the fighting and the
Mm-hmm.
action and all of that. This one has a lot more of the intrigue and the behind the scenes stuff, the politics and the things that take place. But don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of action and fun, exciting stuff. But it was actually really cool for me because I didn't expect that when I was writing it. I didn't expect it to be the 90% of war, if I can use that same example I've been talking about. A lot of it is just the preparation and everything. And it's been really cool seeing, if you read the first book, seeing where Jackson and his team start to take things and to see what Ava's doing and all these things. And I don't know, it's been on my mind a lot because I have learned so much from this side of things, from understanding not the battle parts, not why people die for freedom, but why people work so hard day in and day out, why they get an education, why they learn things for freedom. And I don't know, it's been on my mind a lot because I feel like we need this side too. This is so important. So keep your eyes open. It's coming. I'm really excited for people to read this book after you've read the first one because you really shouldn't read the second one without it.
No,
But
that wouldn't work too well. There's a lot that happens.
yes, there is.
And there's some really amazing people in it. So here it is. Where can people get a hold of Intelligence?
I can give a link or something, but
Okay,
it's
I know where the link is. I think so. It's just
okay,
is it
that'll
just
work.
through TJ Ed or is it available in
Yeah,
other
it's through
places?
TJ
Okay.
Ed. It has its own link to it and everything, so you can just link the page there or something. But
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm warning off one of my here. Come here a sec.
Hi.
I work from home. Yes, and
Best.
I'm looking forward to having a couple. I need to get a couple more copies of this because we're talking about loaning it to my teenager in a little while. I'm like,
Awesome.
oh no, I want this one to be really taken care of, and have some pass along to my little people who are off to the side there, not coming in. So I'll let you go. It's been a good time today, a good amount of time today, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for
Anytime,
having me.
anytime that I can have a little while talking to Eliza is a happy time.
This is a car.
This is a car, yes. Um, so I will make sure that people know where to find intelligence, and I would recommend it to anyone. It's a fantastic book, and I am so grateful. Thank you. I am so grateful to know you. I'm so grateful to have had this time. Is there anything that you would like to leave as a final word to people who
I
might
guess
watch
it
this?
just comes back to that last thing. If you haven't read this book, that's okay, but find something that motivates you. Find something that helps you discover your passion and go out and live it, because it is so important. I would say it's what this whole world and what our lives on this planet is about, is finding who we are meant to be, finding what we're passionate about, and living it, even if it's just 10% of the time.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what we
And
all
hey,
should be doing.
if you start out with 1%, work your way up.
That's right.
The kids go to bed at some point.
That's
Take
right.
a half an
They
hour and
really
do
do.
something. So, okay, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, Eliza. Love to you and Scott and the kids. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks much.